Hello everyone and welcome back to C.A.R. Entertainment. I am your host Dylan Hamilton, guys, and yes, today we're doing more A22 business studies. Today we're going to be talking about government policies, and now we're going to be talking about all of what we talked about in the past with the building cycles and all, and how it relates back into government policies and how these government policies can affect our business. So this is going to be quite a big topic, so it might take us a wee while to get through it. I just want to get it done. That's why you'll probably see we're doing more A22 business more than A21 at the moment, but we're going to get straight into this because government policy. I actually kind of like it. It's quite a nice topic actually. So let's just get straight into it. So there's four major objectives of macroeconomic policy. Macroeconomics, if you remember, it's just a large piece of economics instead of microeconomics. So macroeconomic policy, there's four major parts of it. Well, you have price stability, and essentially what this is, it's the goal of the monetary and fiscal policy, which we will talk about later. And this is aiming to support sustainable rates of economic activity. The policies are set to maintain a steady rate of inflation and deflation. The other major objectives are full employment, high but sustainable rate of economic growth, and keeping a balance of payments and equilibrium. So what does this actually mean? Well, firstly, it will mean there's a benefit of trade if you can get all of these. So it gives you a benefit of trade, which then influences your stronger diplomatic relations, and it will increase the standard of living. It increases the capacity to produce long term. It means you're more allocative and productive and efficiency. It means you have a greater variety of economic goods as well. So let's go through them one by one then. So price stability. The benefits of having stable prices is that you can recognize changes in the relative price, allowing for a well-informed investment decision. So therefore shareholders can make a better investment. It will reduce inflation by reducing interest rates. You'll have financial stability, and you can avoid unproductive activities against negative impact of inflation and deflation. It will impact by increasing employment and avoiding inflation and deflation. So there's major factors then that influences all of these, not just the one we just said on price stability, but factors will influence the ability of the government to achieve their key policies. So the factors that will influence if they can achieve these or not are your macroeconomic policy impacts, the laws and the legal system influences, the productivity of factors of production, technological development, and the availability of factors of production, along with the amount of international trade taking place and the geography of the country. For example, if you're landlocked or not, if you have a port. So we'll move on to the next one, which is economic growth, and this is an increase in the amount of goods and services produced per head of the population over a period of time. This is beneficial since it tends to lead to an improved standard of living for the population, and it reflects an increase in business activity within the economy. It implies that if a consumer has a greater level of disposable income, then the consumer spending may well increase. The benefits of having economic growth is that you have higher living standards and employment will be affected, meaning it'll increase. The accelerator effect, well, whenever growth will be stimulating new investments, this is an accelerator effect, and it will impact by having greater noise pollution. It will increase demerit goods, which will damage social welfare, and it may also increase waste, reducing social welfare. So the next one then is sustainable development. We want to maintain this. So sustainable development is economic development that is conducted without the depletion of natural resources. Therefore, the future generations can what's the word I'm looking for here, live through this as well and benefit from the development that was made. So the social and economic and environmental activities will be undertaken to meet the current needs in a way that doesn't hinder the ability of future generations to meet these needs also. The key objective is to ensure the environment is healthy, the economy is thriving, and there's an increased levels of prosperity and an improved quality of life. The policy of sustainable development will imply that citizens will live within the limits of the environment, society will be fair, healthy and strong, sustainable economy will be achieved, there will be responsible use made of science, and the innovation will be adequately promoted. The impacts of it it'll be quite beneficial because activities will be undertaken to meet future generations' needs, so the future is being taken care of. It will increase prosperity and quality of life, and it will also reduce long-term liabilities through lower operating costs. It will also then further, if you want to go into an impact on this, it will increase employment and improve the local community. So we're going to move and merge employment and balance of payments into the one slide here because they're quite short ones. So employment is the implication of higher levels of unemployment. So unemployment, a higher level of unemployment will mean more people will claim government benefits, and this increases government expenditure. With people being unemployed, there's less disposable income, and therefore there's less spending, and there's a reduction in market activity, and there will be a deterioration in the general economic conditions. So now, obviously, the opposite if there's a high level of employment. The balance of payments is a record of one country's financial dealings with the rest of the world. It summarises the net effect of a direct result of trading activities. It is preferable to minimise your deficit since you're being paid for by the taxpayers from a general increase in borrowing of the UK government. The achievement of the government policy objectives is when you're using your fiscal policy, your monetary policy, and your regional policy. These three policies allow the government to meet their objectives. And we'll get on to those and talk about them a wee bit later on. So, firstly, they'll talk about this balance of payment and trade deficits and surpluses. So, in a balance of payments, if you have a trade deficit, which basically means you're not making enough, so basically, I think it's essentially that you're importing more than you're exporting. So you're not exporting enough, you're not producing enough, and this will mean then you'll have a slow growth, there's a low demand. There'll be a low standard of living, you'll have a loss of jobs, and the currency will weaken as well. But the impact of a trade surplus, which is whenever you're exporting more than you're importing by like a quite large amount, and then you'll have a pressure on the currency to appreciate. It will allow the country to be a net exporter of capital, and the protectionist will respond, and demand pull inflationary pressures will arise. You also have conflicts between objectives because you can't exactly have healthy growth and low inflation. This is very, very difficult. As if the economy grows too quickly due to consumer spending, then demand and outstripping prices rise, which means low inflation doesn't occur, that's high inflation. You also have healthy growth in the balance of payments equilibrium, as when the economy will quickly grow, customer spending will be high, and this means import growth will pick up relative to exports, and this will lead to a trade deficit because you're importing more than you're exporting, and therefore your balance of payments will not be in equilibrium. You also have low employment and low inflation, as if the government tries to reduce unemployment through reflationary measures such as interest rates or increased public spending. This will result in a reduction in unemployment, which will push wages and then prices higher, meaning low inflation doesn't actually occur, that's high inflation. So we'll go through these then. We'll go through the regional and fiscal policies. Monetary policy will be in a different video because it's quite indefinite, quite hard to get your head around, but we'll go through these first. Well, you have the regional policy, which is government financial assistance trying to encourage businesses into regions of the country with economic activity low. So for example, if economic activity is booming in Belfast but it's very low in Newry, they might try and give a regional policy to give financial assistance in Newry, get businesses in there to boost economic activity there. The fiscal policy is an economic policy conducted by the government through taxation and public spending. Now, there's different forms. You have three different forms of fiscal policy. You have a neutral fiscal policy, which is a situation where the planned expenditure will equal the planned revenues received by the government. So it's essentially just the same. Then you have contractionary fiscal policy, which is the situation where planned expenditure is less than the revenues, so it will reduce the total level of spending. I should note that if you haven't got fiscal policy, it's essentially just how the government spends its money. It says where they're spending it on and how they're receiving it. So we'll get a lot about taxation and stuff like that there. So you go watch our tax video if you want to know more about that. And the different types of tax and etc. and all that. But yeah, essentially the fiscal policy is how the economy and will be spent, how the money will be spent, and how it will be received. So if it's neutral, that means that they're going to be spending the same amount as that we're going to receive. Contractionary is that they're going to be spending less than they're receiving, so they're going to receive more. But an expansionary fiscal policy is a situation where there's less revenue than expenditure, and so total spending will rise. And this benefits business and economies in the short term, as they're spending more than what they're receiving, and therefore it's boosting the economy because they're actually spending more, they're investing more, if you will. So the fiscal policy then involves the use of government spending using direct and indirect taxation and government borrowing. It's used to change the pattern of spending on goods and services, and it's means which redistribution of income and wealth can be achieved. Again, go watch your taxation videos for all the different forms of tax, because you'll probably be able to tie this in if you're asking a fiscal policy question. The budget is an annual statement of how much the government intends to spend in the next year and how spending is to be financed. You also have expansionary and contractionary, so we're going to go into more depth in these here. So if you use an expansionary or a reflationary fiscal policy, you'll probably have to cut levels of direct or indirect tax, which will increase government expenditure and it will encourage more spending and boost the economy. If you have a contractionary or a deflationary fiscal policy, you'll have to increase tax through direct and indirect taxes, whilst cutting government expenditure, reducing the level of demand and reduce inflation. These both can be necessary. Government spending is facilitating state welfare support for low-income households and is used to manage aggregate demand. This can be done through transfer payments, where welfare payments are made to benefit recipients such as state pensions and other benefits. Current spending, where spending on the state has provided goods and services such as education and health. And capital spending, which is infrastructure spending, such as spending on new roads, hospitals, motorways and prisons. The government spending will enable direct government provision of public and merit goods. Merit goods are provided by the public and the private sector. It has a positive marginal cost of supplying to extra users. They also have a limited supply, so potentially high opportunity cost. Rival has an influence where its consumption by one reduces the availability to others. Now we're talking about private and public here, so basically if the public sector consumes a lot of it and rivals, and the private's going to have less availability. Excludable, private healthcare and education, so if more people go private, then the public are going to decrease. And it's also merit goods are also rejectable by those unwilling to pay for a good or service, so it's not necessarily a necessity because it is private, for an example. So for example, you have to pay really high to have private healthcare, so you can reject that and just go public and get it for free. NHS, what a wonderful thing. But then you have public goods, and these are normally funded and provided by the government. These have a collective consumption which is provided by me and you provide to all. So I provide it and you provide, so it's collective. It's largely unconstrained in supply, and there's non-rival consumption, meaning that it's non-excludable, which means it gives a rise to the free rider problem, and it's non-rejectable, which is usually funded by general taxes. Thanks for watching this video on government policy, guys. Next time I'll probably be going to talk about the monetary policy. I've been Dylan Hamilton from C.A.R. Entertainment, and I'll see you next time.